As I mentioned before, we can now, since we're caught up on episodes 1 through 5, we can start covering each individual episode of WandaVision. So let's talk about episode number 6. All right. Some of you, a lot of you canceled your Disney Plus subscriptions, and rightfully so. This is why I am here. I'm going to give you this information that's happening in WandaVision and some of these other comic book related shows that may be pushed out by Disney. If you can, I will say right from the get-go, sort of avoid paying them directly. By all means, do it. Or you can just stay tuned to me and I will keep you guys updated on what's going on. Look, we know what's happening with this whole Gina Carano thing, and they need to be made to pay from an economic standpoint. It's not like it's going to put the biggest dent in their pockets, but I do believe that the alternatives popping up and people not being incentivized to give them money because they clearly have a slant and a bias when it comes to the politics. Look, I'm all for it. But let's talk about WandaVision, episode number 6. This was interesting. Not a whole lot really happened until, let's say, the very end, where it was all sort of coming into fruition when it comes to WandaVision. But I did thoroughly enjoy that ending. Let's say it was slow. It had to get to where it needed to get, but it got there nonetheless. As far as what's happening with SWORD and the FBI and all of that, as to be expected, that clash that's happening between the head and Monica Rambeau as well as Jimmy. Look, that clash was inevitable. We saw that was coming because they see, let's say, not eye to eye when it comes to how they see this whole situation with Wanda and what's going on with Westview, as Monica is more sympathetic or empathetic rather, and the others aren't necessarily so much. So what we did get out of that, for those of you that weren't paying attention to it, they did finally have a bigger clash, and they wanted them to be kicked off, demanding that they be kicked off. Let's say this whole scene, if you will, that goes for Darcy, what is it, Jimmy, as well as Monica Rambeau. So those three. So which is kind of a very weird scene because it didn't seem like it was authentic, if you will. What ends up happening is that they are being escorted from the scene, okay, and then they end up powering the agents and take their guns, and it looks like they're going to be doing some more undercover work or something else to try to get to the crux of what's going on. Of course, they are also hacking into what seems to be this whole scenario, because there's things that aren't being said that they want to try to figure out as to what's actually taking place and what's going on, because it's more than meets the eye. And what they did end up finding that, of course, Monica Rambeau's, she's being changed, let's say, from a cellular level. But that seems to more so point to the fact that there's going to be some power-related things. And like I told y'all last video, I'm not at all interested in her getting her powers from this hex or going in and out repeatedly from Wanda's little home here. And what I'm getting in terms of these vibes here, which leads me to this next point when it comes to this show, is that, all right, so let's backtrack just a little bit. So you're seeing that Vision is slowly but surely starting to gain some sort of free will, if you will, and he's becoming more curious. So he's wondering what's beyond where everybody doesn't go when it comes to Westview. What's outside of it? So as he goes there, it seems to, once he exits that, it's slowly but surely killing him. So he does end up getting out of that, and oddly enough, Wiccan, or they're not calling him Wiccan yet, but Wiccan is chilling, and he can hear what's going on, right? He's like, I can hear my dad, you know. And by the way, that's one of the twins, for those that don't know who I'm referring to. He's not Wiccan yet, though. What is really cool about this episode, I probably should have mentioned this earlier, is that it's centered around Halloween. So what it is that we get, if you notice, we get some kind of iconic looks from some of these characters. So it's one nod to the comic books. So it may look ridiculous, and you see Vision dressed in how he was dressed, or Scarlet Witch dressed how she's dressed, or even with Quicksilver and Speed, and then Wiccan. All of those look like their comic book counterparts, so it is a nod certainly to that. Hopefully they do a lot more than just nod to it and they really get that going. So what we started to see was Speed, of course, as well as Wiccan. They ended up getting their powers. So Wiccan, Speed is able to zoom, of course, around much like Quicksilver, and then Wiccan, he had that sort of connection. Something was going on outside of that. Even though it's outside of Westview, he could feel what was going on. And then the big thing that happened in this episode was that the world started to expand. So she's like, where's the father? Or where's Vision? Because again, he's outside of it, he's slowly dying. So instead of trying to bring him back into Westview, which seems to would have healed him or something of that nature, well, she just expanded it. And what you saw was, including those federal agents, as they got consumed by this world, they got to be in it, right? So some of them went from, let's say, being cops or federal agents, excuse me, and then they became, let's say, clowns in whatever's going on with this whole Halloween episode. So it was a very interesting thing because not only did it show, and it seems to reiterate the fact that Scarlet Witch is in some sort of control here. A couple of episodes before, it was like, is it really her that she's referring to? But it does seem like she's in some sort of control because you can see how powerful that she was and which she expanded the world. And this is why I keep saying that it's giving me a lot of House of M vibes, that particular instance there. So we're going to see how that sort of attributes to the universe at large, but it was a very interesting episode in the fact that we got to see her expand her powers. We got to see, let's say, nod to the old comic books with the costumes. We got to see Wiccan and Speed grab some of their powers, and also, which I didn't mention earlier, you're seeing with Quicksilver, him being aware of what's going on, that something is happening in terms of Scarlet Witch altering the world that is around them. Which is very, very cool because he's like, look, man, I know I'm not the guy. I am your brother. I know I'm not the face that you remember. I'm not really understanding what's going on here, but I am impressed by the fact that you're in some way, shape, or form in some sort of control. So you keep continuing to see that there's these characters that are sniffing out what was going on. We know Agnes. Agnes was in this as well, and Vision seemed to zap her and snap her into like, hey, something's going on. So I'm interested to see what's going to happen with that character. We still haven't seen her husband either. But going all the way through the end, it's that expansion of the power which makes for an interesting dynamic, because how far is she going to go to where she is consuming the world that is around her? And they go from, oh, she's in absolute control, or there's something else taking place, or she's back to being in absolute control. So it's going to be interesting to see how this develops going forward. But the episode itself was decent, and it's starting to speed up a little bit. It does kind of drag to really get to the crux of what happens at the end, but that seems to be just the flavor of this show that we're getting, and that, yeah, it's going to be a slow drag sometimes. It's not going to be all these action explosions and stuff like that. It's simply not built for that kind of show. So what's going to happen to the world at large, we will see when it comes to the Marvel Cinematic Universe. So I'm going to wrap that up just like that. I hope you enjoyed this review of WandaVision Episode 6. Again, if you canceled your Disney Plus, be sure to tune into my videos, and I'll make sure I keep you guys updated as to what's going to happen. Still not happy with how they're handling Monica Rambeau. I've already told you that. I'm not saying the actress is bad or anything like that. You know I'm going to be very critical of what's going on with that character, because I not only was excited to see her in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, I'm still sour about how they handled what happened in Captain Marvel when they infantilized her and had her looking up to Carol Danvers. We'll see what happens with that whole dynamic. But my prediction, unfortunately, is that there was some sort of clash that's going to end up happening with them two, that we're going to get more perspective of, and unfortunately she's going to end up filling the role of Captain Marvel, which at this point I don't want her to have if they weren't going to let her have it prior to or after, let's say, having that name. I would much rather had it before, but now she needs to be full-time. She needs to be Spectrum or somebody else, not, let's say, affiliated with Carol Danvers, because in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, as much as a crime that it is, she is the Captain Marvel, and she's like the first one too, and the Avengers are named after sort of her fleet and whatnot. It's all criminal how they destroyed legacies of both Marvel as well as Monica Rambeau. So I hope you enjoyed the video. Until next time, y'all be easy. Peace.